They called a vet in. The vet tranked 12 lions, actually tranked all 15. And once they were all asleep, the vet just went up to 12 of them and put a 2-2 bullet in their brain. Done. So now what is conservation? It's more than a feeling, as you said. It's something that you've actively got to work on and actively got to recognize that it's not this sort of princess unicorn kind of world. It's harsh. It's a harsh reality.
Welcome to the Saltlick Worldwide Podcast, your ultimate destination for hunting, fishing, conservation, and gear. From international hotspots to the backwoods of America, we bring you the real stories, raw opinions, and the conversations others won't have. Buckle up. The adventure starts now. Today's guest is one of the most powerful voices in the modern hunting and conservation world. Robbie is the founder of Blood Origins, a nonprofit storytelling platform built to reveal the truth behind hunting, rooted in science, emotion, and culture. He grew up in South Africa, earned a PhD in wetland ecology, and today he bridges the world of conservation, biology, and real-world hunting advocacy. Blood Origins doesn't just talk about hunting, it explains the why behind it, and it doesn't shy away from tough conversations. But with that said, Robbie, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Your mission, your clarity, and your ability to speak the truth is why we wanted to have you. So let's dive in.
Thank you, Sean. I much appreciate the opportunity. And I'm always humbled when somebody wants to talk to us. You know, I'll never really say no to anyone. So if you want to hear me talk for a little bit, I'm happy to talk.
Well, absolutely. Like we talked a little bit off camera, I think in following you, especially here these past several months, you just never stop. You're constantly going and going.
Yeah, I think the running joke is when I spend more than 2 weeks or 3 weeks at home, my wife and my kids are like, hey, when are you going next? Like, when are you out of the house? Because, you know, a bomb hits the house when I'm home. So, I got back from South Africa on Saturday, so that less than a week home now. The place that we were in South Africa was just, I've never been to a place that had more ticks. I have never seen this many ticks. Like driving through the grass with the Land Rover, the front of the Land Rover was covered in ticks. The sides of the Land Rover was covered in ticks.
Little bitty seed ticks or the sure enough big ones?
Both.
Ugh.
Seed ticks, and not the big ones, but they've got, smaller ones there. So we were constantly on tick alert. I'm flying home on Friday, and I feel something on my inside of my thigh, and I'm like, oh my God, I brought a tick with me. So I get into Atlanta Airport. This is probably too much information for your audience, but
that's a great
got
start.
to Atlanta Airport and went to the bathroom, took my pants off to see if I've got a tick, and I just had like a bite on the inside of my leg. I was like, oh, okay, it's just a bite. Well, turns out that I have tick bite fever. So right now I'm talking to you with tick bite fever. I'm on doxycycline. Felt like a truck had hit me yesterday, and then felt pretty good during the day, and then had sort of the shivers and the shakes last night going to bed. When the second time I had sweated through the sheets, I just decided to leave the towel next to the bed to just soak up all the sweat instead of having to go to the bathroom. So I feel pretty good today. It's the second time I've had tick bite fever in my life. But yeah, and then in between that, as you've mentioned, I got in on Monday. So I got in on Saturday. Monday, I drove to Iowa to turkey hunt with Dudley. So I drove 9 hours up to Iowa, turkey hunted, killed a turkey on Tuesday morning. And here's the craziest thing about that turkey hunt is that Tuesday morning, I also had a press conference that I had to take from the turkey blind to speak to a bunch of journalists in Botswana that were filming the computer screen that I was coming through on, And so I took my camo cap off. I took my face mask off. I didn't realize that I had my bow release in my wrist, but I don't think they would have realized what it was. And I did a press conference essentially from the turkey blind. We closed all the windows, and for a documentary that's coming out next Tuesday. So yeah, that's been my week. And I drove home from Iowa on Wednesday and fell over with tick-bite fever yesterday.
Well, no rest for the wicked. Isn't that what they say?
That's it.
Man, yeah, I've not personally got tick-bite fever before, but several people in the groups that we take have, especially early season like this. And I don't wish it on anybody. I don't do well with fevers. I'm a big baby when it comes to a fever. I'd just rather crawl up and turn all the lights down, turn the AC down low, and just get away from the world for a couple of days if I get a fever. I just can't deal with it. But man, yeah, you're definitely busy. But so Robbie, let's jump in here a little bit. So for the listeners and the viewers out there who may not know who you are, and frankly, if they don't, they're living under a tree somewhere, because if they have anything to do with hunting or conservation, they've heard of you before. But give our listeners just a little quick background about, who is Robbie and what is Blood Origins.
Yeah, so I was born and raised, well, not born, but I'd say born and raised in South Africa. Wanted to be a game ranger living in South Africa. Didn't really understand hunting. Knew my family had hunted. Knew my grandfather and father had hunted, but that wasn't available to me. I grew up in a very big city called Johannesburg. Was in the conservation space, like conservation, like wildlife, like all young men in South Africa do if you want to become a game ranger. Did my undergraduate, did my honors, did my master's, and came to the States and did a PhD at Ole Miss. And then was a professor at Mississippi State for 6 years, became a consultant, worked in the BP oil spill, just a constant sort of building blocks to essentially what I think I was destined to do, which is this. I have a science background. I feel like based on my grandfather and my father, we have a storytelling background to our family. I've always wanted to communicate my science. I've always been good at communicating my science to all levels of individuals, from people who are in my field that were not in my field, from politicians to Joe Blow on the street. And so, yeah, that was, Blood Origins came to, and again, I think the most important thing is I wasn't born a hunter. I wasn't raised a hunter. I haven't been hunting my entire life. I only started hunting here in Mississippi 2005, probably 2006 is when I first started hunting. And so, coming to this idea around Blood Origins and the idea for Blood Origins, I've got 2 small boys. And again, I was a new hunter. I still consider myself a new hunter. Sort of engaging in new things around hunting and obviously getting sucked into the world of this hunting industry. Yeah, I just started looking around and seeing what the industry looked like and what hunters looked like and the PR around hunting and hunters. And to be honest, I'd never heard of hunting, right? I'd never heard of the PR around. I've never heard of anything tied to it, because I guess, social media only came to the forefront around 2005, 2006. Really only been in social media world for the last 15 years, if you want to call it that. So we just came up with this idea of storytelling around hunting and hunters. And we did that for about 3 years. We started in 2017, and 3 years into it, I drained my savings account, and my wife was like, man, I'm so, I love your passion for what you do, but, you need to figure out how to get this paid for. And a good friend of ours just said, look, you're getting into the advocacy space, education space. Why don't you turn yourself into a charity? Turn yourself into a 501c3. And so I was like, okay. And I think we did it the right way, because, we had spent 3 years building a name, building a brand, building a voice, building a feel. And so the day that we announced that we were a nonprofit, I think 50 people gave me money. And I was like, okay, this is going to work. And now we're on a rocket ship and we're just barely holding on.
Oh yeah, you can tell by your socials too, with the podcasts, and I mean you're everywhere. It's hard to, especially if you know kind of ingrained in the hunting world, or you stay up to date with it. Let's say, I mean it's hard not to see you. I mean you're everywhere. I mean as soon as I open Facebook in the morning or Instagram, there's another. I saw the stuff from Botswana, the compare and contrast that you did from I think it was 14 to current, and with elephant population issues that are going on still, and when they closed hunting and they opened it back up, and so that just, and it's really cool too. You've got a really unique take on that, and it's definitely educational. I learn stuff all the time. I mean, I think it's great the way you tackle things, because we're all about conservation and we love international hunting, and people like you that are in the thick of it. I can't wait to sit down and talk to you, because I just know you've got all kind of cool stories to tell, and you've been in the thick of it yourself.
Yeah, and we're constantly in the thick of it, right? I think the way that I started this podcast, a lot of people don't actually understand how much is going on in the background. And things are just happening all the time. Like here, I'll show if does this go on YouTube?
It will, yes.
So you can see, I'm going to put a photo up on, so for those of you just listening on the audio medium, you might want to jump over to YouTube. That happened 2 days ago. The same time as me being here. So that's a cheetah immobilized. I just moved 12 cheetahs into Mozambique. It's the largest cheetah relocation project in the world. Did that at the same time as me turkey hunting, the same time as me doing a press conference in Gaborone. It's
God.
Crazy.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, it's an amazing project, dude. It's like it's so cool.
Well, I mean, my next question was going to be, how do you find time for all that? But you obviously you don't sleep much.
Look, a lot of people say I don't sleep much, and it may be true, but I get, I'm an early to bed, early to rise kind of guy, and I have to be because, like 9 o'clock I'm out. Like I don't stay up much later than 9, and my kids are like, "Oh, Dad's about to fall asleep," and I'm gone. But I'm up at 4:25 every morning. And at 4:25, this phone it's already destroyed at 4:25 because Africa's been awake for 6 hours. Australia's been awake for 10 hours. New Zealand's been awake. And if if you want to communicate with us, we're not hard to find. So you name it, people are communicating with us on it, through it. Apps, DMs, emails,
WhatsApp.
Messages, texts. My WhatsApp every morning is probably at a minimum 120, 130 WhatsApps every morning.
And I thought mine was crazy. I'll get 4 or 5 a day kind of thing, especially coming into hunting season. But that's nothing comparatively speaking to what you got to go through.
Oh man, and the thing is, Africa loves big WhatsApp groups, and so yeah, and look, and I'm not complaining though. That's what we built, and that's what we're continuing to build, and I think we've only scratched the surface of what we can do. And from now on, we just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Next week's going to be a huge week for us in terms of the Fine Balance documentary coming out, and it's a really, really good documentary. It's probably our best work yet, and every time I say that, the next piece of content we create, it's one level up. We just keep leveling up every time in terms of what we create. And this time we've done a lot better job of like an impact strategy and how we're going to about getting it out there. And we've had this big media event in Gaborone and Botswana. We've got a big email distribution campaign coming. We've done a good sort of run-in roll in terms of the content leading up to Tuesday. So yeah, pretty excited.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I can't wait to see that. I love everything that you guys are putting out. I think it's really well done. And there's to me, I was going to say this earlier, and then we kind of went down to the first of what I think is going to be many rabbit holes. But we talk about conservation, and there's people that talk about it, and then there's people that do. You're obviously on the latter side of that. It's real easy to throw out, "Oh, I'm a conservationist," or "I practice conservation." Well, you practice what you preach. You're a perfect example of what we all hope that we can be eventually.
Yeah, look, and again, I think we've only just started scratching the surface, right? We've got great partners all over the world. We find really cool projects, and we wanted to really eliminate the middleman. So we just wanted to find cool projects. Like we just got money to build a kitchen in a little homeschool, not really homeschool, a little rural community school in the Eastern Cape. It's a project we got involved with probably at the height of COVID. So 2020, late 2020, we built a soccer field at Carlisle Bridge School with John X Safaris in the Eastern Cape. And that project was called Everyone Deserves to Play. And it was really the first time that we showcased sort of the indirect benefit of hunting to a thing like hope, like joy, like laughter. And it was simply building a soccer field that had netball courts on it and stuff. And so that school now is growing. And so we're going to build a kitchen tied in with that cafeteria so that the kids can have lunch right then at the school. And so, the outfitter reached out. We've got a relationship. He's like, hey, do you want to be involved in this? I said, sure, absolutely. How much is it? He told me how much it is. And we went and we raised the money and we're going to implement it and tell the story about it.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely, yeah. We I did see that, and I really like what he's doing over there. He runs I've not hunted with him yet, but I do know several of the PHs, and it seems to me like he runs a top-notch operation over there, and I believe he's a member of the custodians too, is he not?
Correct.
And you are as well, correct?
Correct. We are I think we're a life member. Blood Origins is a life member of custodians. Yep.
We'll get into that a little bit because, folks, there is a difference. People often confuse custodians with FASA, and though it may have a similar structure, it's two totally separate organizations, and we need to make that distinction to people before they get into it. But with that said, we're talking about Africa. So, for growing up in South Africa, how did that influence your view of conservation and then later in life hunting?
Well, it like I said in the beginning, it really didn't. It didn't influence anything tied to hunting because I wasn't germane to hunting. I didn't hear about hunting. I wasn't involved in hunting. I didn't interact with hunting. Nothing. I grew up in a town of 8.5 million people, with friend circles that didn't do that. I scouted. I did scouts with friends, so we were very outdoorsy. Every opportunity we got, we went to the bush. Growing up in South Africa, you always go to the bush with your family. So you go and see wildlife. You go to Kruger Park. If you got a little bit more money, you go to maybe a little swankier place. And that was just I just was intrigued. I just loved wildlife, and I loved the bush, and I loved the ecosystems and stuff. So that's what I wanted to study. I went to Botswana when I was 16 years old and fell in love with the Okavango Delta. And that's why I became a wetland ecologist. And so that's what I studied all through university. And as I said, every kid in South Africa, every young boy, probably some girls, but for the majority boys, would... they want to be policemen, they want to be firemen, they want to be lawyers, but they also want to be a game ranger. You want to be that Land Rover jockey that's driving everybody around and showing that's an elephant, that's a baobab tree, that tree will kill you, that berry you can make and use it as a compote to heal, toothaches and stuff like that. And that's what I did. I worked in Pilanesberg for probably 2.5 years, taking people on game drives, just, 1 weekend a month, earned some pocket money, got in the bush, did my PhD, did my honors and masters in Kruger Park, so was totally involved in wildlife. And then just came to the States and didn't realize, again, no idea about hunting, no idea about the impact of hunting, no idea, what it does for people, wildlife communities, had no idea. Even when I started hunting as a whitetail guy, right, in the South, I guarantee you 95% of whitetail hunters are essentially the same as me. You have no idea what happens in Africa. You have no idea the outcomes and impacts, right? You just don't. You're not thinking that way. You don't need to. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not telling people that that's the way they need to think. But yeah, it's a long answer to a short.
Well, and that brought up another point too. Going back to it, you've said that conservation is not a feeling. Can you dive into that a little bit?
I said that?
You
Shit,
said
that's pretty
that.
good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I'll be.
Damn, son. No, it's not a feeling. Conservation, I think a lot of people, especially those that are apathetic to what hunting does or are very much empathetic to animals, believe that, cute and cuddly, save this, save that. That's the way that conservation works. And it really isn't. And unfortunately, conservation has elements to it that are a little unsightly. If you're going to introduce lions into a place, great project, right? And if you're going to introduce them to a reserve, let's just walk through this whole example. We're going to introduce lions to a reserve. It's a fenced reserve. It's not an open reserve. It's never had lions before. Amazing. That's exactly what you should be doing. Okay. Lions get dropped off and they start hammering prey. And the prey doesn't even know what's hit them because they've never seen a lion before. And the lion will walk up to them and they're like, what are you? And get smoked. And so, is that a good thing or a bad thing from a feelings perspective? Oh, poor impala, right? Got smacked by a lion. Well, probably for the most part, people will be like, it's only an impala. It's okay. Okay. Well, those 4 lions that you just dropped off in 3.5 years' time are now all of a sudden 22 lions, 24 lions, and they have eaten the place out of house and home. And these guys that put lions on and they're like, that's what we want, are now second guessing, going, we need to do something about this. Okay, so what do? Well, you've got to find another home for 18 lions. More than likely, there's not another home for 18 lions. And so how do you intend to maintain the conservation work that you've done, the biodiversity work that you've done, everything that you've strived for in this community, in this ecosystem? Well, from this example, there's only 2 ways about it. Number one, you cull. You go in and you euthanize. And the property that we were just on in Zululand a week ago, that's what they do. There were 15 lions. They didn't want 15 lions. They wanted 3 lions. And they euthanized 12 lions. And they didn't euthanize them by hunting. Okay? They called a vet in. The vet tranked 12 lions. Actually tranked all 15. And once they were all asleep, the vet just went up to 12 of them and put a 2-2 bullet in their brain. Done. So now what is conservation? Right? It's more than a feeling, as you said. It's something that you've actively got to work on and actively got to recognize that it's not this sort of princess unicorn kind of world. It's harsh. It's a harsh reality. And for instance, these 12 cheetahs that we've moved to Mozambique, more than likely 40% of those cheetahs are going to die in the next year. It is what it is. It's part of Mother Nature. It's part of the relocation process. It's part of conservation process. So yeah.
And I get we post, we do a lot on social media. So I'm constantly, we're constantly getting attacked by, we call them the greenies on the other side that don't understand. And as soon as you have any content somewhat related to hunting, they're going to, somebody's going to jump on there and try to attack you. And I always try to take the approach, well, I'd like to try to educate somebody and start up a conversation. If they'll comment, then I try to comment back and start up a conversation. But 9 times out of 10, you can't talk to those people in that they just can't see beyond the emotional side of it. like you just said, you had to cull those lions. Well, you say that, and on social media, everybody's going to be pissed off. Well, why couldn't you just do something? Why couldn't you relocate them? Why couldn't you do this? That's the harsh reality of it, right? That's what we have to do. Nobody else wants those 13 or, dozen other lions either. They're already up to their ass in them, or for whatever reason, they just don't want lions. So it's not just as easy as flying in with a helicopter, tranking them and pulling them away, and people don't understand that.
Correct. 100%. Yeah,
elephants
that's the
are another
reality
good
on the
example
ground.
too.
Use X, lions, wild dogs, cheetahs. Cheetahs are in the same boat. Cheetahs do very, very well when they've got given a good prey base and no lions. And they're soon going to be at too big of a population of a reserve. They're not smacking prey like lions do, but there is some inbreeding and genetic issues that you've got to start considering, like mom is breeding with son, son's breeding with daughter, sister kind of thing. So yeah, same situation. You either relocate, find a place, or give them the green liquid.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. And let's go back. Let's dive into that for just a second too, because there's two options, right? You had the vet, y'all had the vet come in and euthanized them. The other option is to cull them via hunters. The argument towards hunting is that while it costs to have that vet come in and do all this, and or you can generate some income from it by bringing hunters in to cull these 12 lions.
Yeah.
Which is better. I mean, that's
Well, here's how crazy it actually gets. Is that the government would issue 12 destruction permits, but they wouldn't issue a single trophy hunting export permit.
It's just, you're stepping over $1 to pick up a dime is what that sounds like to me. I don't get it.
Anyway, I think in those kinds sort of scenarios, I think that if you had a hunter in camp and there was that opportunity and said, okay, look, there is an opportunity to hunt and it's non-exportable, okay, no big deal. And you would earn a lot more money. Like, instead of it costing vet fees, all of that kind of stuff, you're actually gaining money from the resource.
I guess that's probably the side that I would come down on more times than not, is the hunting side, used as a way to generate revenue. And, and that money goes right back into, those programs. And that's what people need to understand too. Hunting is, I think hunting is necessary in a lot of these situations, or it's certainly the best of several evils, and people don't want to see it that way. I think it's better for them to say, oh, well, the vet was there and they tranked him and then they put a 2-2 to their head, rather than a hunter going out and squeezing the trigger and doing the same thing.
Look, at the end of the day, the result's the same.
Right.
You have a deadline.
Mm-hmm. Well, and do you think, and one of the things that I see all the time when we get comments like that, and not just us, on other groups, there's like the Dark Continent group and the Hunt South Africa groups and all these big hunting groups, right, on Facebook. And a lot of, you get these people on there, and I think hunters too, like, I feel like the hunting community has lost the ability to explain itself clearly to these people, and it's easy for us to say, just F off, rather than actually sitting down and having a conversation with those folks. What's your take on that?
We've taken a different approach from the get-go, is that, we'll have a conversation with anybody. We're not afraid to have a conversation with anybody. I think people will say, dare I say, disrespectful things, or we'll just use like swear words, essentially, when they don't have the confidence or the education to actually retort and have a intelligent conversation or discussion back and forth. And so that's why people retort with science or emotion or just a little bit of honesty. I think people just, get fed up very quickly. And so one of the things that we always approach in engagements like that with is you approach it with a lens that you're not changing the person's mind that you're actually engaging with. So what you're doing is you're setting a dialogue thread that 10,000 voyeurs are actually going to watch. And you'll be absolutely blown away at You'll be blown away by how many people are actually just watching you. They're not engaging. They're not hitting the like button. They're not commenting, but they're watching. And and when you respond to someone, the person watching, whether they're in your camp or not in your camp, sees your character, sees information, gets a tone of respect from you. And at the end of the day, all you're doing with those voyeurs, you're planting seeds all over the show. And that's what we do. And you do it we've been called gentlemanly in our engagement.
It's a very elegant approach for sure.
Why would you want to be any other approach, right? And if it gets to the point where somebody's just like not listening, that's okay. You just say, you're not listening. You're not answering my question. I keep asking you a question. You're not answering my question. And I don't know why. And again, those are the things that people's bullshit meter gets better and better and better every day on social media. And so they can tell in that engagement who's the person just like with depth, with knowledge, or the person who's just like out because they've got a specific opinion that is based on, a very flimsy argument or very flimsy fact set.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful the way you explained that. I never thought about it that way. I have a tendency to try a couple of times, and then, like you say, you ask the why, or why do you feel this way, and you keep getting the same thing over and over and over, and it's like this pre-written, packaged garbage that somebody used Google or Chat GPT to come up with, and this is their argument, and it's 100% based in emotion and not science, and you can't get them to sway off that, and they can't even explain their point to you either at the same time.
Yeah,
and then they get mad.
Yeah, exactly. And you can easily show that, right? You just, when somebody goes, okay, I'm going to ban hunting. I want to ban hunting. Typically, my very first response to them is like, okay, cool. I don't get it, but let's just make the assumption that you are right. Hunting's not needed. Let's ban it. Okay. So how do you propose to protect the 1.5 million square kilometers of habitat in Africa right now? And this is what happens. That's happening between you and me.
Yeah, silence.
Crickets. Or they won't answer the question. And I said, you didn't answer the question. Or the other approach that you do is you sort of play devil's advocates and you get them to agree with you without them knowing that they've agreed with you. And so you say to them, man, I get it. Like, we're trying to figure, and maybe they know who you are, maybe they don't know who you are. We're trying to figure it out too. And so you love wildlife, right? As a question. Yes, we love it. We love it. Okay. Do you agree that habitat is like the most important thing that we need to protect in this world for wildlife? Yes, absolutely. You're number one. Well, did you know that hunting protects more habitat by like almost double in Africa than anything else? And it's almost like, how can you go back from what you just said? Because you just agreed with me. You just agreed with me that habitat is the number one thing. So protecting it must be a good thing, regardless of the motivations of an individual for them wanting to do it.
You're right. If you hit them with that, they can't deny it, and then you've already got them backed into a corner at that point in time where they'll still. I mean, in my experience anyway, I'm sure you've seen it. Once you've caught them, then they start backpedaling. Yeah, and I don't know if I've ever been successful. We had Sue Tidwell on. Do you know Sue? Okay, so we had Sue on, and I think she does a really good job, just like you, talking to, especially from her perspective, she really goes out of her way to try to bridge the gap between non-hunters and hunters, and really does it in a unique way that I really appreciate from her perspective. And she's doing it in that she's not a hunter herself, but her husband is, and she appreciates that fact and what non-hunters and hunters both bring to the table from a conservation perspective. But those people, that's a conversation she's had such great luck with, and she's so just excited about it, and you see it in her posts every day. And she's a great example of what can happen, from a hunting and non-hunting perspective. And then I like the way you explain, the conservation side, because you handle those people kind of the same way she does before they get unruly. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that too, where they just come out and start dog cussing you right from the get-go.
Yeah, fortunately, again, I think that for some reason we just have not had that. We just don't have the crazies come and attack us, because I guess I don't know, it's very difficult to do it.
I see the same 5 memes. Like every time we post any kind of hunting related content, same thing. I had a stupid comment yesterday. We posted about the SEI Foundation and the Amy Bell Bluebed program. We're getting ready to take 3 groups to South Africa, and I made just a short little reel about that. And the comments came out, and there's these stupid anti-hunting memes and all this other stuff. I'm like, we're talking about charities here, folks, and you're dropping this. Like, come on.
You must have the attention of somebody, man.
I have the attention of several people, I think.
Because I'm like, I've never received those kinds of things.
Oh my God! If you, like I said, go to our Facebook page and look at our call it the last 3 posts. Look at the comments. It gets crazy on there. But well, since we're kind of already talking about it, there's some controversial topics I want to try to get in while we've got it. If you're okay with that, and the first.
I'm not good with controversy. I hate controversy.
I've heard that too.
I don't like talking about controversy.
All right, well, I'll give you the softball to begin with. Then let's start with CBL Lions. Then, what is your take on the hunting right off the bat?
I will say this, not even tied to CBL Lions. I'll just say I'm not a big fan of an animal being placed in an enclosure that you hunt within 6 hours time or 12 hours time, regardless of the size of the enclosure. Now, the captive bred lion industry is changing significantly. There's lawsuits happening. There's, the former DFFE minister obviously shut down all new captive bred lion facilities. The current ones that are happening, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with the 13,000 lions. They offered a voluntary buyout or voluntary exit. Only one person took it. So I'm just not, when they were doing it, and there's still people are still doing it. I think the intent of putting an animal into an enclosure, and they put a lot of rules and regulations around it, right? They have to put it in. You can only hunt it 6 weeks later, 3 months later. It's a wild animal then, potentially, quote unquote. But because who's checking up on people doing it, I know from talking to people that they would drop the lion, 5 o'clock that afternoon and the next morning hunt it, or even drop it that morning and hunt it that afternoon. To me, that's not the right thing to do. It's interesting, just from a lion conservation perspective, this property that we were in KwaZulu-Natal had a fabulous wild managed lion population. That, if you decide, number one, it's not all about money and it's not all about greed. This place has a great lion population and they get to hunt one lion every other year. You get to charge a lot of money for those lions. Okay, so it almost makes up for you smacking 10 lions. But it's just, I just think you've got to look at it in just a different way. And a lot of people will say, well, what's the difference between a lion and an impala or a sable? Because, hey, impala and sables, that happens all the time, right? Animals get dropped off. A couple of weeks later, you hunt them. You don't know the difference. And you're right. From a rudimentary perspective, there isn't a difference. An animal is an animal is an animal. But societal perspectives matter. And a lion is certainly a lot different than an impala. And, it probably deserves to be treated a little differently. So yeah, that's a long way around answering a very straightforward question. I'm just not a fan of a put and take environment that really just is not conducive to, what's the word I'm looking for? Is not conducive, but I don't want to use ethical because ethical is very subjective. Okay, is not conducive to classic hunting opportunities.
Fair chase principles.
Yeah, fair chase. Well, again, fair chase can be defined by organizations, but
Sure.
also subjective.
Well, and I think that's, when you look back, you think, Green Hills of Africa and stuff like that, and Teddy Roosevelt, and, when the safari culture kind of started, especially from a Western perspective, taking off, and people, there's still a bunch of people that think Ernest Hemingway when they go to Africa for the first time, right? That's what they envision, and that's what they picture, and that type of hunting. But yeah, and in full disclosure, I'm very much anti CBL. We had the president of FASA, so we had Tony DeBlain on. We also had Randy Vestrad on, who's the new VP, and then conversely, I've also had Doug Cocroft on from Split Image Taxidermy. So we've had several different views about it. I'm more in your camp and Doug's camp, whereas Randy and Tony think otherwise. And I understand their perspective in that, to them, within a few days of dropping that lion off, he's just as wild as he would have been in the wild. They get wild quickly. I don't know if I buy it or not. I'm never going to hunt a CBL lion. Those guys swear that it's one of the most fun hunts that you can do, and it can still be affordable. A wild lion hunt is super expensive. So I think when you start splitting hairs, though, when you get into the cost associated of hunting a CBL lion versus a wild lion, that's not it, to me. You're kind of crossing the line there. You're trying to bait people in with the it's $30,000 cheaper to hunt a CBL lion than it is a wild lion. Well, yeah, but that doesn't make it right.
Yeah, and it's really, at the end of the day, and this speaks to a lot of different animals like rhinos, it almost devalues the animal. So a lion should be worth $70,000, $80,000. A rhino should be worth $70,000, $80,000. But it's not. And we've got to think about, how do we value those animals more? And if we did value those animals more, maybe there'd be different hunting models.
Well, yeah, and I agree with it. A lion hunt should not be a cheap hunt. It shouldn't be. And it should be an exclusive hunt that not everybody can afford. Rhino should be the same thing. It is not everybody should be able to go out and afford to hunt a rhino or a wild lion. That's the way it is. But when you're breeding these things, like you're throwing out parade candy, then it makes it more attainable for the everyday man to go hunt them. And I understand that side of it. Doesn't mean I'm going to participate in it. But at the same time, if I have a hunter in camp that wants to hunt a CBL lion, I'll be the first to congratulate him and pat him on the ass after a successful hunt. I can handle it that way. I have no problem with people who do it. It's just not for me. I'm not going to do it. Yeah, and that kind of is what it is. But talking about that, that'll segue into the controversy around high fence hunting and fair chase. So what's your take on high fence hunting in general? Obviously, from a South Africa perspective, most everything in South Africa is high fence, right? So you have to expect that. When you go into Northern and Central Africa, that doesn't happen nearly as often, with maybe the exception of Namibia. But so what's your take on, high fence hunting in general? And this doesn't even have to be just for South Africa. This can apply both to the States as well.
So I don't have a problem with high fence hunting. And here's why. I think and I'll differentiate it between North America and South Africa or Africa. Africa today is no longer the Ernest Hemingway, Green Hills of Africa, that Theodore Roosevelt that you read about. Okay, in those times, it was a sea of habitat with pockets of humanity scattered through Africa. Now it's a sea of humanity with pockets and islands of habitat. And so a high fenced operation in Africa, in South Africa, really does two things. Number one, protects habitat, which is critical. Number two, it allows you to hold onto the animals, which is a private landowner model in South Africa, so the animals belong to you on their property. Number three, It gives you an opportunity to secure the area from a poaching perspective, from a habitat loss perspective, all of those things. The question always comes, well, how big of an area, now this spans between North America and South Africa, is, considered then this idea of fair chase behind a high fence? And everyone will say, well, if there's a fence and an animal can't escape, it's not fair chase. And I said, okay, show me if that's what you've built your opinion on, show me the data that says that these animals' home ranges or movement patterns are larger than the fenced area that they are in. Because to me, I've been in high fence places in which these animals, they're so big, these animals don't even know there's a fence. They don't move that way. They've got all the resources that they need. They've got great habitat. They've got great water. They've got access to the opposite sex. There's really no need for them to range massively or migrate, especially, again, given the situation of the sea of humanity and these islands of habitat. Now, if the high fence is 200 acres, and whatever that number, I just use 200 as a hypothetical example. I don't know what the number is, to which I become uncomfortable hunting within it because of animals' lack of escape from me. However, I've been in a 3,000-acre high-fenced facility in Texas in a side-by-side that we drove 110 miles in 3,000 acres. We drove at 10 miles per hour, and we did it for 11 hours. Went from 8 a.m. in the morning to 7 p.m. at night, and we were chasing an eland. There were 45 eland in this 3,000 acres. We saw the arse end of an eland at 6:45 in the evening. Didn't kill one. It's probably the hardest hunt I've ever been on. Mentally. But could you the next day rolled into that 3,000-acre pasture and that eland was standing on the road and whacked it? And everyone said, well, that's the reason you have, that's the high fence, right? It just constrained the animal. Okay. I've done the same thing on a low fence.
Sure.
We've rolled into a place, got in the stand, the buck walks out or the animal walks out of the blind or whatever you're driving, and there it is. Shoot it. Done.
Or
Easiest hunt in the world. And
come into a corn pile or something else.
Or just, there's so many factors that people just are unwilling to weigh in their minds, and they build this opinion on what a high fence actually is. And I wish I could, honestly, anybody that's against a high fence, take them to an 8,000-acre high fence. Walk them in and go, okay, now let's see what you think about this place. And you don't see another, you can't see, you drive for 3 hours and across the property. It's like, come on, guys. This is, So again, I think the last thing I'll say about it is each person is subjectively going to decide in their brain the number that makes them comfortable shooting inside a high fence or not. And here's probably the other controversial statement I'll say is that I think people will be okay hunting in a smaller fenced area if nobody knows about it.
Yeah, it's the perception of that other people are going to think about what you're doing. What does it look like to the general public? What's social media going to say about it? Or what are your friends going to say?
Right.
Well, and that, to me, I think going back a little bit to when we had Doug on, his version of it, he explained it, and I really thought his was great. What was his, take on it, and his was, so long as the animal so long as the hunter does not have an unfair advantage when it comes to hunting the animal, and the animal has ample chance to escape, then it's fine. And to me, so that takes the size of the place out of it, right? because it's subjective at that point in time. And you're right. I've seen 300-acre high fence places that are wild as crazy. Just as anything else. But and then the other thing that we'll back into there, we broached the subject when we were talking about the CBL lion, but there's this practice of, you talked about dropping off impala and dropping off this and that, but there, in the industry, we call it put and take practices. What, obviously there's a place for it in the industry and it works. But a lot of people have a headache with it, or they get heartburn with it. But when they go over, that's how most of these farms operate. I don't want to say all of the concessions operate this way. There are some very large farms that have very tight quotas that probably don't do it. But I'm going to say the vast majority of farms, they're bringing in stock every year.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the vast majority, but a lot of them do. That you don't know, And you don't need to know it either.
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's fairly new is Alabama House Bill 509. I know you've commented on it before, and I think it
passed out of the House, by the way.
Oh, it did. So now it's going to the Senate. So that's a pretty important piece of legislation there that has the potential to spur its brother and sister states to move in similar directions, especially in the southeastern part of the United States.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into the specifics of the bill, but really the thing that we are constantly fighting against, and we've done it in Wyoming, we've done it in Colorado, we just did it in 3 bills in North Dakota. This bill 509 in Alabama is legislating through the sort of ballot box biology, okay? And ballot box biology in Colorado comes down to like a physical vote of the public changing something, but it also is the legislature mucking around in wildlife issues. And they're essentially the public. They're not experts. They're not scientists. They have no bearing whatsoever when it comes to managing wildlife resources or natural resources. So they don't need to be mucking around. And that's what 509 and bills in North Dakota and Wyoming and whatnot are doing. So they're taking the management, they're taking the tools away from the state agency that is in charge of actually doing the work to manage the natural resources. And anything in that frame of mind, anything along those lines, is just something we can't be for. And so that's why we're going to come out against it every single time. Because one, it's ballot box biology, just at a different level. And two, let the agency who you've hired, the government has hired, the state legislature has put budget behind, that's directed by the governor in most states, and has, I've taught them at Mississippi State University to be resource biologists. Let them do their job.
So what would you? I'm gonna come at this from a different angle. I have friends that are deer farmers, and once again, without diving too far into it, they're in talking to them, about this, they're very much all for it because they feel like. Those deer are their deer. They're the ones that breed the deer. They take care of the deer. They doctor the deer, on and on and on. And they don't want a state agency telling them what they can and cannot do with the deer that they've raised, from a fawn, and now he's 9 years old. Like similar to these animals that you see behind me, these are farm raised deer. They're actually still alive, by the way. These are replicas, but these are, farm raised deer. I think the one directly behind me is now 9 years old, and the one on the other side is 7. So, and then, so those guys, those friends of mine that are in that industry, they're coming out all for it. They think it's a great idea.
So what is the difference between the way that it runs right now versus what they're going to get?
Well, I can't answer that because I'm not in the business. I think to them it's the ability that the state has to come in at any time. Like we'll use a CWD for example, right? So CWD comes in, or there's a CWD scare, and the state comes in and they euthanize all of your deer stock, right? You have no say whatsoever about it. And that's one of and so that's one of the things that I think everybody's scared to talk about it. Nobody wants to go there. I do get it out of some people, but I think CWD is a big concern, and just the fact that a government agency can come and regulate what you do, and they akin it to raising cattle or raising sheep and on and on. That's their take on it. That animal belongs to them, and the government shouldn't have any oversight and or ability to police.
So are we saying that the government, let's use cattle as an example, if something broke out in a cattle herd in a random county in Alabama, the government would have no control about would have no say-so to go in and take care of the problem?
I understand it. I'm just giving you a different perspective from.
That's my perspective,
yeah.
Right? It's my perspective is I don't think they're not gonna mess around in your business until the shit hits the ceiling fan, and then that's the job of the state agency. This job of the state agency is to and it all comes down to CWD. Let's be honest here. Okay?
Of course it does.
And if CWD is present in your facility, confirmed. Okay. Now, I'm not getting into the whole fucking conspiracy theory of whether CWD is actually even real, if it's just scabies, that a deer has never died from CWD. Nobody's ever died from COVID either. Okay. Not a single fucking person in this entire world, excuse my language.
No, you're good. Have at it.
From COVID. They've died from complications of it. Nobody has ever said COVID's not real. Okay. Same thing's happening with CWD. Okay. Doesn't kill, the actual CWD doesn't kill a deer. You're absolutely right. I'll say it on record right here. You're right. It's pneumonia or something else that kills them. Okay. Because of CWD. Has CWD ever transferred to a human from eating deer? No. Are we supposed to be shit scared out of our minds because of it? I don't think so. Okay? Even just because it's in the same group of brain encephalopathy that mad cow disease is, how many people died of mad cow disease back in the 1990s in the UK? I think there's only like a handful. Okay? So if there is a jump, I think, again, proactively, this is what you want government to be in. If there is a jump, if there is a jump, you want the government to be fucking ready, right? How hard would the government be failing if the jump happened? They were like, oh, we didn't know this was going to happen. Okay, we're not really prepared. They would get slaughtered. Okay? So, I think that if CWD is positive in somebody's deer farm, are you then allowed to move deer wherever you want? However you want? Because nobody has a say-so? You're the only person who has a say-so?
Yeah, that is a perfectly valid argument. I mean, I'm with you on that. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's for the greater good. And states have already taken measures. They've closed borders. We can't bring, whitetail across state line, not live whitetail. You can sell semen, but, some states don't allow, you can't. I know, like, I'll use Kentucky as an example. I have a farm in Kentucky as well. And in the state of Kentucky, I can't take a whitetail carcass. I live in northeast Kentucky, right on the Ohio River. So right across the river is the state of Ohio. I can't bring a carcass across to Ohio that's got any brain matter in it whatsoever. So the meat has to be fully processed, has to come from a processor, has to be packaged, no brain matter, no nothing. Boom. You can get a ticket the second you cross the river. Fish and game. Oh, or in this case, it's ODNR. But yeah, so instant. And several other states are that way. We hunt in Georgia as well. And then coming back into Florida, if we shoot an animal, there's a permit process now that we have to do ahead of time to transport it. And once again, we have to make sure that there's no brain matter, yada, 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 associated with it. And it needs to be claimed before you come. So, there's all these things. And there was a scare in Kentucky last year and the year before where in southwest Kentucky, right on the Tennessee border, there were several cases of CWD that were found. And, so everybody in that state started freaking out instantly. And hunters are real bad. Oh, they're gonna shut down feeding, and you're not going to be able to put mineral boxes out, and you're not going to be able to put corn feeders out anymore because they found CWD 600 miles away. But that never happened. They didn't shut it down there, just in those areas. But that's, people always jump to that.
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of conspiracy around CWD. I think, number one, I think it's real. I think number two, I don't think it's as huge a deal as everyone makes out it to be. Number three, I think we have to be prepared for the worst. If it does turn out to be a big deal, which is what everyone is doing, I think that people, the science has shown that specifically captive bred deer operations have in places been the center of having CWD positive outbreaks. So that's all I'm going to say.
That's fair. Well, and I know, like I said, I want to start wrapping this up because you've already given us an hour of your time. But one thing I wanted to bring up, talk to me a little bit about your collaboration with Twin Needle and the new bino harnesses. I know I think you did an auction just end or getting ready to end on the last one.
Yeah, so we just did one with Twin Needle. I'm looking at it right now. It's like an hour to go. And so by the time this podcast drops, you guys would have missed out on a final option. But right now, we've got 10 bids, $455 currently is the Twin Needle auction item on the last bino harness. We did a collab down there, custom color, black bino case, red piping on the zippers, red inside. Really cool company, really cool bino harness. If you haven't checked them out, they're really cool. And yeah, we partnered with Twin Needle, and then we partnered with a specific non-profit that we'd had on the podcast called Glenn Thurston with Mental Hunts. And he just had he's just a really passionate guy about mental health, specifically with guys, and being able to talk about mental health. And he just, he didn't know it was coming. We just picked it and said, Glenn, we're going to send you all this money on every single cent that is raised. And I think the minor harnesses were going for $150 US or $160 US, and we had 12 of them. So I don't know how much that is,
$1,400.
Yeah,
like
so he's
that.
going to get $1,500, $2,000 to his organization, which is awesome.
Yeah, and it's a cool bino harness too. I have seen it, and it's really unique. It really pops.
Yeah, it's got a great molly system. Obviously, I love it because it's the first Blood Origin specific, like big white helix in the middle. So yeah,
But yeah,
we're a big fan of it.
Yeah, I saw it and I thought, man, this is cool. I got at least. I figured there was kind of a story behind there, and I wasn't sure who you were donating to, but I knew it had to be there. But well, let's wrap with this one. So you had a Facebook post the other day, or an Instagram post the other day, and I looked at it. I'm like, and then before I read the caption, I'm like, son of a bitch, that's John Dudley in the blind with you. So you got to go. You went turkey hunt with John Dudley, Mr. Knock on himself. Talk to us a little bit about that. How was that?
Yeah, nobody knows this, but I actually taught John everything he knows when it comes to bow hunting and archery. Yeah, no.
Feel free to comment below, John.
Yeah, a lot of people say to me, they're like, "Do you bow hunt, Robbie?" And no, they don't. They say, "Are you a bow hunter?" And the way that I respond to them is I say, "I bow hunt. I am not a bow hunter." And so I told John when we got up there on Tuesday morning, I said, I drew my bow back and, shot my 20-yard pin because that's what we were shooting. And I said, I'm not going to be comfortable shooting anything beyond 20 yards because I've never shot a turkey before. And he said, no, that's fine, no problems. And I said, also, the last time I pulled this bow back was me releasing an arrow on an elk that I killed in Oregon. And so that's why I bow hunt, not a bow hunter. And that's like, I'm going to pull my bow back. I'm going to make sure it's on, and we're rocking and rolling. And so, yeah, John reached out. I met John. We've been actually friends, acquaintances for probably 2 years now, 2.5 years. And then I met him in person last year on a turkey hunt. And we just connected. He had some issues that he was going through, and I gave him some advice in terms of what to say and how to say it. And We just stayed in contact after that, and then he reached out. He said, hey, you want to come up to Iowa and turkey hunt? You have to put in for a non-resident tag in this area. It's very specific dates. And I said, sure, and I did it. And then I actually booked the South Africa trip after that. And so I was like, oh man, my wife is going to kill me. I'm going to be home for literally 36 hours and then have to be on the road again. And I actually missed the opening day of my season because I was driving up there. But it didn't really matter because we got the job done on Tuesday morning.
Perfect. And we followed John for a long time. He's like the OG when it comes to bow hunting. And obviously he had the sponsorship change last year too. And, kind of going back to his roots a little bit, but how is he in person? I mean, he's just such a wealth of knowledge, and Knock on TV is such a big thing, and he's had huge success with it, but from the personal perspective, and you're hanging out with him in a blind hunting turkey. I mean, he seems like he'd be just a ball to hunt with.
Oh, it's a great dude, man. He's good. He's funny. He's actually, what's funny is I get to see a side of him that maybe a lot of people don't see. Is that I think he's very inquisitive around these conservation issues, and that's just not his bailiwick. He's a bow hunter, he's archery guy, and it's almost like he has all these questions around it. And that's all we did was we just sat in the blind. And he had, what about this? Or what do you think about that? And what do you think about this? And so he was very inquisitive, and he's a great turkey hunter, and we had a great morning and had some great interactions. And it was actually funny to see like the machine of Knock on TV, like the content that got produced just from the turkey hunt, and the things that I messed up, and I threw my bow in the back of the truck thinking, oh, it's all good. And then little did I know, a day ago, I got called out for bow etiquette.
That was going to be one of my questions that I was going to ask you. Did he tune you up over it?
Everybody tuned me up, man. I got so many messages from friends of mine that are bow hunters saying, you should know better, Robbie. And I was like, no, I shouldn't. I don't bow hunt. The day was over. We threw the bows in the back, So
that's fantastic. And did he critique you at all while you were hunting with him?
No. And it wasn't like, it was funny. I don't know, maybe I was lucky enough, again, just the world that I live in. So we've done an episode with Travis T-Bone Turner. And the Hoyt that I'm shooting right now, the RX4, Travis set that bow up for me. And so he gave me sort of techniques and whatnot on that bow. And I guess my form can't be that bad because John didn't say anything about it. Or maybe it's really terrible and he's just like, oh, I don't know, man.
There's no fixing that. There's
no hope for this boy. Yeah, just tell him where to send the arrow.
Some things I can't unfuck.
But I sent the arrow exactly where it needed to go. So, and so then we actually did a little bow build after that on Tuesday. And yeah, it was, he's just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to that, man. Just crazy amounts of knowledge. And, to the point where it's just like clockwork, right? He's just going to work. And
yeah, he's one of about 3 people that I can name off the top of my head that are just like, that guy's just unbelievably good when it comes to a bow. Like he's just on a different level than the rest of us can be. And it makes it look easy. But anyway, so before we get out of here, Robbie, is there anything, you got the stage now, is there anything you really want to bring up, you want to talk about, you want to get a message out there?
No, I think from a hunting perspective and talking to the non-hunting majority, I think people just need to recognize that the people that don't quite understand what you do and maybe them questioning, why you do what you do, really coming from a place of that. They have no idea. They have no understanding. They were like me growing up in Johannesburg. I did not know anything about hunting. I didn't talk about hunting. I wasn't in that world. And so I would just say in interacting with those people, give them a little grace. And be like, man, maybe they're coming from a place that is genuine, that is like, I have no idea what you're doing. And I have no idea why you're doing that. That seems gross. That seems disgusting. Just maybe look at it through a different colored lens the next time somebody does that, and just respond in a way that, again, like I said before, respond in a way that is, you're not trying to change their mind, but you're also putting forward a foot that shows you as a hunter, how you act, your character, your language, all of these things that may change someone's mind about, hunting and hunters.
That's fantastic. I'm absolutely going to take that advice, and I will try that next time, and I will report back to you. I'll screenshot a comment and send it to you and say, hey, this works, or it doesn't, or I'll keep trying. I'd rather approach it diplomatically anyway. But listen, Robbie, we appreciate it a bunch. And for all the listeners and viewers out there, go follow Blood Origins on YouTube, Instagram, and visit bloodorigins.org to learn more about and support the mission. And remember, this isn't about sides, it's about truth. And until next time, folks, live free, hunt hard, and keep chasing the adventure. Thanks a bunch, Robbie. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, man.